Hey guys, my name's Reed Coverdale, and you're watching The Naturalist Capitalist. Thanks for tuning in again, and I've got Dave back on the show. How are you doing, Dave?
Not so bad. How's it going?
It's going well. So, there's been a little kind of confusion in the Libertarian Party forever, as you and I know. Everyone's always arguing about who's more libertarian than the next guy. And we kind of all know that no one is the quintessential libertarian. It just doesn't exist. But we always like to argue about, who's the purist or whatever. The reason I've been kind of glad that we have Jo Jorgensen is she doesn't really feed into that persona. She seems to be interested in expanding the party and bringing people in, even if they don't agree on everything. But there's been a video that's just surfaced of her talking about our girl Tulsi Gabbard, and what she thinks about her views. So I'm just going to play that, and then I want to get your reaction, hear what you think.
But I would like to mention that I was in a debate, and they asked us, who was the most dangerous person or who was the worst person on the other side. And I think the first person said, "Oh, Bernie Sanders, he's just awful guy." And I said, actually, I think Bernie Sanders is perfectly safe because he's telling us he's going to steal from us and he's going to do it. The person who scares me is Tulsi Gabbard because everybody thinks, oh, anti-war, she's libertarian, and she's not. So yeah. Her true color showed when she endorsed Joe Biden, but of course she was going to. She's a Democrat. So I hope to offer a true alternative, and I hope that people who believe that war is the worst thing we could be doing will look into my campaign. In fact, my campaign from the start, the very first policy paper I had written for my campaign was to turn America into one giant Switzerland, armed and neutral.
So, yeah, she kind of said, she kind of dissed Tulsi Gabbard and then said she wants her supporters. So what do you think of that clip in general? What's your response?
So, I mean, obviously I love Tulsi, but I think I kind of agree with Joe that she's not a libertarian. And she never really pretended to be. She spoke to libertarians. She talked about wanting the support of libertarians, but she never called herself one. So I don't see it as much of a diss as actually the truth. She was the best candidate and the most dangerous candidate to the Libertarian Party because she was going to bring over people like you and people like me that wanted to see somebody that had a better chance of winning, that maybe didn't agree with us on economic policy, but would get us out of the wars, legalize marijuana, rein in the debt at least a little bit, not end the Fed or any of like the extreme things that we want, but and some extreme things in the other direction, like free college or free healthcare. But I'm okay with free healthcare if it gets us out of the wars and legalizes and ends the war on drugs. I see that as a win. And so I think that does make her the most dangerous person on the other side, coming from somebody like Joe's point of view. And I think Tulsi's supporters should support Joe. She is the only serious anti-war candidate left. I mean, Howie is also pretty anti-war. So I respect the Tulsi people that are going to Howie as well. But as long as you're not voting for Joe or Trump, like you're okay with me.
So I do have to disagree with her a little bit in what she said, because I think it's fine if she says that she is the most dangerous and that she could steal libertarian votes. I think that's true. What's not true, and what pissed me off when I was on the campaign all the time, was that the only libertarian thing about her is that she's anti-war. I mean, that's just not true at all. So what I've been trying to do is show a lot of Tulsi supporters that Jo Jorgensen's views actually align with Tulsi's probably like 70%. I mean, even some economic issues are the same. You know, most of them aren't, but they're both against corporate bailouts. They're both against Wall Street and corporatism. You know, and then, yeah, when it comes to when it comes to social issues, they agree on almost everything. Drugs, victimless crime, prostitution, prison reform, criminal justice reform, demilitarizing the police, I mean, all those things are the same. And then foreign policy, there's very few differences. I'd say Joe Jorgensen believes a little bit less in the war on terror than Tulsi did, but there's like this huge crossover, and it's being crushed because they're acting like really the only thing we have in common with libertarians is that we're against war, and that's just like complete bullshit. And I'm trying to destroy that narrative. You know what I'm saying?
100%. Yeah, I mean, we're fighting the same fight here on that one. My Twitter is mostly Tulsi people too. I'm constantly arguing. They're like, Gary Johnson, fuck Gary, or Larry Sharp I talk about a lot because I'm trying to convince the New York team to work with Larry and some of the other candidates. I'm working on 3 campaigns now this year, and they're saying exactly what you're saying. Okay, we have the anti-war, but what does state senate have anything, or governor have anything to do with anti-war anyway? I'm like, okay, but what about ending mass incarceration? What about demilitarizing the police, defunding the police, ending the war on drugs? What about ending corporate bailouts, ending giant subsidies to the fossil fuel industries? What about getting rid of occupational licensing so we're not criminalizing people trying to make a living? We agree on so many things. Like, let's just work together already.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's what I'm really pissed about here is that this got unearthed, I don't know, like yesterday or today, and it's kind of going around Twitter. And there's so many Tulsi supporters who are just like, fuck Joe Jorgensen, I'm not voting for her anymore. And that kind of pisses me off too, because if you're voting for someone based on what they think of your candidate instead of they think about the issues, like where they stand on the issues, that's a problem in itself. But I'm also kind of pissed at Joe Jorgensen. It's like, why did you say that? I mean, if a little bit earlier in the video, she's talking about how she wants to win Tulsi Gabbard supporters. And then she basically just said, the only thing we agree on is war. You're horrible on everything else, and you were dangerous to my party because you were stealing votes. It's just like, why is this happening? So.
Yeah, that's a constant move of libertarian candidates that has pissed me off for a very long time. They do nothing but critique the two-party system and two-party candidates. And then they also just like expect people to come from those two parties. Like, oh yeah, Democrats should come here, but all you do is shit on Democrats. Like, they're not going to like you. You're going to piss them off. Like, Tulsi Gabbard is the closest thing the Democratic Party has to a libertarian.
Right.
You don't insult that. Insult Joe Biden and team up with Tulsi Gabbard against Biden and Clinton. You team up with Rand Paul against Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell. That's how we win people over. Because the people that are Democrats that are fans of Tulsi Gabbard, or like even Tom Steyer or Andrew Yang, are already disillusioned by the Democratic Party. You don't want to piss them off. They are the warm leads. Those are the people that might actually be voting for Joe. Same with the people that voted for Rand or Ron Paul or even like Ted Cruz, or fans of Thomas Massey or Justin Amash or not Mitch McConnell, the other one, Mitt Romney. They have fans that are going to vote for Joe Jorgensen this year because they are pissed off with the major party candidates. And we need to be nice to those people. We need to work with those people. We need to be working on their endorsements. I mean, if Tulsi endorsed Joe or Andrew or Mitt Romney, like, that would be huge. That's what she should be
Yes.
working on. Instead, she, like almost every other Libertarian candidate in the history of the party, shits on every politician inside and outside of the LP, and expects to win people over that way.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. I'm kind of newer to the party than you are, the actual politics of the inside of it, and finding more and more out about the Mises Caucus and Dave Smith and Jacob Hornberger, people like that. They're like, I don't think they're good. I mean, I've talked a little bit on this show about how I used to be a Christian, and the way I think of them is like the fundamentalist Baptist Christian who, I know you're a Christian, but I don't know what your views are on this, but someone who believes like every single verse of the Bible and thinks if you don't believe like a single verse out of the Bible, you're going to burn for eternity. When I was a Christian,
like
I hated
those people that
the
think
most.
that tattoos will send you to hell. Like,
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
that's like the worst messenger you can have for your cause. So, I don't think Joe Jorgensen has shot it with this comment or something. I think she's still better than Jacob Hornberger or something like that. But I'm just hoping moving forward that we don't see more of this. And she is on Dave Smith's show, so maybe it's bringing it out in her. I don't know, but hopefully she's better moving forward. So.
Yeah. I think when I saw you kind of come into the party a little bit more, and you came in as a fan of Jacob Hornberger, and I saw that happen, and that was before I really knew a lot about him. Then I found out that he was Mises, and I already had problems with Mises Caucus. So I just kind of like let it run its course with you. I was like, I know he's going to do enough research. He's going to see enough videos and be like, holy shit. Okay. All right. These guys are nuts. But I mean, it took a couple months, and that's fine. But I won't even mention it. I'm just going to let him find it. But yeah, they are basically cancer.
No, you're totally right about that too, because for those I haven't had this show too long, but yeah, back in March when it was obvious Tulsi Gabbard wasn't going to go anywhere, I started looking at the Libertarian Party, and I found out about Jacob Hornberger. And at first he seemed like, okay, wow, this guy's principled, he's got his shit together, he knows his issues. And then you're absolutely right. Like the more I dug into him, and then the debates that I saw him in and the videos I watched, it was the epitome of that idea of I'm more libertarian than everyone else and no one else is as good, and you're not a libertarian unless you have like 100% agreement with me on all of these things. And I was like, how does this guy expect to get anything done? And then he even said in a Dave Smith interview I watched him with, I'd rather win 1% of the entire, or not 1%, not even that much. I'd rather only have 1,000 true libertarians than, have 10 million people vote for me. And I was like, what's the point? Like, we're not going to convert enough Americans to be 100% ideological libertarians. It's not going to happen,
Yeah. I know we've talked on this show before about Larry Sharp's 80-20 rule. That's kind of where I'm at. If we can agree 80%, which includes Tulsi Gabbard, Justin Amash, Thomas Massey, Joe Jorgensen, almost includes Jacob Hornberger, actually, to the point where if he would have won, I would have still supported him and probably voted for him.
Yeah.
I would never have supported him pre him winning the nomination, though. Other than that, he had no chance.
So, are there disqualifying issues if does something make someone not a valid libertarian? If they're for regime change, war, or they're for mass incarceration, even if they're good on everything else, are there any issues that automatically disqualify them in your mind?
I would say that most of them have the ability to be explained. You know, if you have a good reason for why you think the way you think, then I might be able to excuse almost anything. As long as you agree on like everything else and are like a solid winnable candidate and it's something for me, as far as the politician goes, it matters what they're running for more than anything else. So like I worked for a straight socialist, like she calls herself a socialist. She was backed by the DSA and AOC endorsed her. But she was running for district attorney. So no economic power at all. So who gives a fuck? But she also had the power to, on day one, make weed and prostitution completely legal in Queens, the entire borough of Queens. So I want that, you know. So I worked with her. But I think as far as like to be part of the party or to be considered a libertarian, I would say you have to be okay with at least the decriminalization of marijuana, maybe not legalization. I can understand the people that want it to be like only medical or like cigarettes at least, you know. I can see some control on it, whatever. And they have to be against like regime change war, just like stupid pointless war. And I would say that they have to be against adding to the debt significantly. You know, they don't have to be like specifically against like ending the Fed or getting rid of the debt, but they have to be like conscious of the fact that we can't just print money endlessly. They have to be logical. Like Tulsi, you know, she wanted to still spend a lot of money, but she knew where it would come from. She didn't want to just add trillions of dollars to the budget from nowhere. I think those are the main disqualifiers for me.
Yeah, so to me, like Ted Cruz is not close enough to being a libertarian. He is way too much of a warmonger. And then Bernie Sanders is way too much of a spendthrift and wants way too much government regulation. Like those guys are outside. I think Tulsi Gabbard's probably about as liberal as I could get with a presidential candidate. You know, like you said, when you have a different position, it kind of changes what the parameters are of what's acceptable because what they're going to have control over. But as far as president, you know, she'd be on the edge in the liberal side, and then maybe someone like Mike Lee would be about as conservative as I could get without freaking out about voting for him. You know, so anywhere between there, I kind of agree with you. Like, I think as long as you are anti-war, as long as you believe people should be able to make their own decisions, as long as you don't want to incarcerate people for victimless crime, and you want to at least have responsible spending, like you said. Like at this point, I care a lot more about economic issues than I usually would because we're going down a one-way street to hell right now economically. Yeah. But so I think those four issues, though, like as long as you're on the right side of those, then you're acceptable with what Larry Sharp would call the 80-20 rule. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we should encourage. Join the party. We shouldn't be like, oh no, if you don't agree with free market principles in every area of the budget, you can't be a libertarian. You know, no, I disagree.
Yeah, I think when it comes to politicians, what matters to me more than anything else is that they want to fundamentally change how the government works. You know, supporting things like the One Subject at a Time Act or the Readable Legislation Act, you know, just the ways to limit spending, make sure that the reining in control of the executive branch. I think those kind of like fundamental defenders of liberty is what I look for more in a politician than anything else. I look for people that want to represent the people of America, not just rein in as much power as they possibly can for a couple of decades and then retire. and
Yeah.
and then pass it off to an even more corrupt, more evil person. uh, so yeah, I think limiting the power of whatever branch of government they're running for is the most important thing for a politician, which
Yeah.
includes Tulsi
So
and Mike
yeah,
Lee.
definitely.
So yeah, I think I would agree they're both within the circle.
Yeah. So I talked about this on your show a few days ago a little bit. You know as well as anyone else that I was uncomfortable with some of Tulsi Gabbard's policies. Like I was a hellraiser in the campaign. Like I was always causing problems because I disagreed with her on things.
Yeah. You're annoying.
But I was, yeah, exactly. Thank you. But I was willing to, publicly hide those disagreements I had and support her anyways, and campaign for her and try to get people behind her because I cared about most of the issues she represented, even though there were a few I absolutely disdained that she had. But what I really want is like Tulsi supporters who have nowhere to go now. I want them to have that same mindset. They've got to realize that you're not going to agree with someone on everything. So as long as you can have a majority of overlap, that's a good thing, and you should support that. But I feel like a lot of Tulsi supporters are new to politics. Because most of the ones who have been in politics, like you and me, like we're already on to supporting someone else. Most of the people who are still stuck on Tulsi and don't have anywhere to go, it's because she brought them into politics, and a lot of them just instantly espoused all of her views, and she doesn't really fit well in any box. So everyone's just confused because they're like, well, I don't really want to go with Howie Hawkins. He's a bit authoritarian. Joe Jorgensen's a little bit too unleashed free market for me, and then Biden and Trump I've got like nothing with. So they're just confused. But I really want them to like realize that people like you and me had disagreements with Tulsi, but we decided to forego them because we cared about the majority of her message instead.
Yeah, I think having one or two fundamental disagreements with your chosen candidate is fine. We're not talking about like the lesser of two evils. Like, yeah, vote for a demented rapist, like, because he has a blue tie on. We're not talking that. We're talking vote for somebody that you agree with on 90% of the issues. Just be okay with that. Maybe she's not going to champion Medicare for all. Oh, well, you still have a Democratic House. If the Democrats actually cared about Medicare for all, they could have passed it already.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so, and I honestly think that Joe Jorgensen would probably sign it.
Mm-hmm.
She cares enough about the balance of power that if the House and the Republican Senate pass Medicare for all, she would sign it, knowing that that's what America wants by the representative republic. So vote for her. It's fine. Like, you'll still get what you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think that she believes in the Constitution. So if the majority of the country wanted to get rid of the First Amendment or something, she wouldn't do that. But if it's some sort of fiscal policy or something, if the overwhelming majority of the country wanted it, she's going to be a representative, not a ruler, is what you say a lot. I like that term.
Yeah.
So
it's my favorite.
Yeah. So most people who watch this know about how I became a libertarian, and we talked a little bit about it last time with you, but was it specifically in 2016 with Gary Johnson, or was it earlier? Like, what person brought you into that sphere, and then like how did you evolve from there?
It was Gary in 2016. My dad told me about him. I had just, interestingly enough, I had just finished what was, I think at that time, season 3 of House of Cards. Like as the election was starting to ramp up and Donald Trump was starting to take the lead in the Republican Party, and I was like, "Yo, this is some bullshit. Like what is this?" And like thinking that I like know what's going on behind the scenes because I've been watching House of Cards and like know it, like just like because it's accurate with a lot of the corruption. It's like it does kind of like flip that switch in your head. I think that show should create a lot of libertarians if you're watching it correctly. But I was just like, okay, Hillary's terrible because she's literally like the dude in House of Cards, and then Donald Trump is a joke. And my dad was like, have you heard of this Gary Johnson guy? So I looked him up, I voted for him, and then after that, I found a Facebook group that was Onondaga County Libertarian Party, which is like Syracuse, New York. And I went to a couple of their meetings. I found out that they were running somebody else for mayor in 2017 and started working on that campaign. Then I kind of bounced around. I moved a little bit through the next couple of years, but found myself in New York City, November 2018, working for Larry Sharp the last couple of weeks of his campaign, and just from there have been active in the Libertarian Party in New York City. Ran for public advocate within the party, and then ran for city council in the general last year. And I'll be running for chair of the Brooklyn County Libertarian Party this year. So, yeah, Gary got me into the party, got me knowing what it was, and then Larry's campaign is what got me involved with people that have kept me in. Because I think that's more important, flipping somebody on ideology, but if they only know you, then you didn't really create a libertarian. You need to get them involved. You need to get them showing up to a meeting or voting for down ballot candidates or volunteering in campaigns. That's a libertarian. Just somebody that watches your YouTube videos isn't quite a convert, in my opinion.
No, that's true. So what brought you to libertarianism? Was it really just that the Democrats and Republicans were so terrible that was the only option left? Or was it something in the libertarian message that really resonated with you? Like, was it drugs or guns or, ending wars? Like, what was there a singular issue, or was it just, wow, everything else is so terrible, I don't have another option? And then you found out about it and you're like, oh, this is cool.
It was mostly guns, drugs, gay marriage, and abortion, basically. Like the mixture of them. The fact that the Libertarian Party was the only one that agreed with me on those 4 issues, because they were the most talked about ones. I grew up, like we've talked, very Christian conservative, anti-abortion, anti-gay marriage. I grew up in a very conservative household. But I, early on, before I even really got involved in politics, believed that there's a difference between morality and legality. So I can be, I believed at a younger age that being gay was a sin, but that it shouldn't be illegal, because that's bullshit. That's not the government's job. And then, I kind of evolved my moral stance as I got older. But my political stance stayed the same, of like, that's not the government's job to tell other people what they can and can't do. So when I started getting involved in politics, I was like, Trump is obnoxiously anti-abortion, anti-gay marriage, and Hillary Clinton is a murderer who's against the Second Amendment. So, yeah, let's find something else.
Yeah. So I was actually kind of similar, because I liked Rand Paul a lot as a Republican, and then when he went nowhere, I was like, okay, screw this. And then I actually found out about the Libertarian Party, and I had heard him kind of reference it a little bit. So I was the same deal. Like, it wasn't necessarily a one issue that I was just like, oh yeah, I've got to, I got to buckle down on this. It was really like Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton were so bad, it pushed me into that zone. And then I started doing research, and I realized that, wow, I agree with these guys on way more than I agree with the Republicans or Democrats on.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this thing that Dave Smith talks about a lot. He's like, we need to run on like anti-Fed and anti-war, and those are the things we need to centralize on, and we need to be principled on them, or we're not libertarians. And I don't necessarily think that's true. I don't think most people care or even know anything about the Federal Reserve. Like, I've found out most of what I know about it in the last year or so. I think the average American has no idea how our monetary system works. And I think it's great to educate them on those things and show them why we have actual solutions for it. But to make that the standard bearer of our party, I think, is a mistake. I think we need to be practical and show people why libertarianism is going to make their lives better, and then we can lead it to, and the reason our monetary system sucks is because of the Federal Reserve, or the reason we don't have any money is because of regime change war. I think if you just go up to the average guy's house and you knock on his door and say, we need to end the Fed and end the wars, he's going to be like, okay.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea what the Federal Reserve was when I joined the Libertarian Party. Now I'm totally for ending the Fed. That only took a couple of years. Just be patient with people. We're not, like, Joe Jorgensen isn't going to win, right? Like, unfortunately, that is a fact. But Justin Amash might be able to win in 24. If we do the right things, if we play our cards right and play the long game and pander to a little bit to the Tulsi Gabbard supporters and the Rand Paul supporters and the Bill Weld supporters, the Andrew Yang supporters, talk about that a solid half of the Libertarian Party is totally for UBI, like, including myself. Like, talk about that to the Yang gang, like, as a whole is. So look into your congressional candidates, because maybe they are part of that half. If you live in New York City's 10th congressional district, your Libertarian candidate is pro UBI. If you're a Yang gang, like, do the thing. Like, we need to play the long game here.
Right.
And we can have national change in like 4 to 8 years. But it will not happen by being Puritans at all.
Right. So who do you think is going to win? Do you think it's going to be Trump or Biden?
Yep.
And
Trump.
If whichever one of them it is, what do you think that means for the future of the Libertarian Party? If Trump wins, what should Libertarians do? If Biden wins, what should they do? Or should they do the same thing regardless of who wins?
I think that they should probably do the same thing regardless of who wins, for the most part. I think that Joe Jorgensen is nothing more than a figurehead at this point. Like I said, we got to be playing the long game. So I personally think it's going to be Trump. I was wrong last time, but I don't really know any Trump supporters that aren't voting for Trump again. And that leads me to believe that that's a pretty standard opinion, and he's gonna still carry that majority. It's probably gonna be close, but I think he's gonna win again, and I think it's gonna be by a larger margin than he did in 2016. But I think that the Libertarian Party needs to focus on down ballot races. Like I said, I think that Jorgensen is basically just a figurehead right now. She needs to be talking about the Libertarian Party as a whole, talking about down ballot races. She needs to be talking about, like, just the ideals of the party, promoting the party, and we need to have people win this year. Joe will not win, but we can have 3 or 4 Libertarians in Congress by the end of the year. We can have a couple of mayors and city councilors. We could have half of a state legislature flipped in 2 years. Like, that's a possibility. We need to be focusing on stuff like that, regardless of who wins. Obviously, messaging will have to change a little bit if Biden wins, but we focus on the election data as it comes every year, regardless of what happened the previous year. If it became a blue district, we talk about blue issues. That's just how campaigns work. So obviously it'll change a little bit, but for the most part, macro planning, not at all.
Yeah. So I'm going to make a prediction, which I've been waiting to do. So first of all, I think Joe Biden is going to pick Kamala Harris as his running mate. That's my first assumption. My second one is I actually think Joe Biden's going to win in November by a tiny amount. And this is why I think that, because Donald Trump lost the popular vote by like 2 million votes in 2016. And there were a lot of like kind of states that usually are on the, are usually teetering either way. And he won them pretty easily. And so the Electoral College went in his favor. But he was running on the idea that his economy was going to be different than Obama's. And maybe to like someone who's not a close observer, that was true because we had like stock market growth and, big business was doing pretty well. But everybody is still pretty broke. Like we all live paycheck to paycheck, and that would be a whole different video I could go into about why we have all those problems. It has to do with, our monetary policy and the bailouts we've had and certain regulations that we've had. So he didn't really change the economy like he said he was going to. There's a couple things he sort of did, like he did cut some regulations. He sort of brought back some fossil fuel jobs, but most of those states are in a world of hurt right now. And it's, he can try to blame it on the coronavirus, but people were living paycheck to paycheck and we were just waiting for a speed bump to reveal how shitty this economy is and has been. And I think a lot of people are waking up to that fact. Now, whether or not they think Biden's going to fix it, that's the question. But I think the people who were willing to flip a coin on Trump, a lot of those people are not going to vote for him again. A lot of people who were like, okay, I'm not crazy about this guy, but he's anti-establishment. He might get us out of the wars. He might challenge the Federal Reserve, and he might tell us the truth. A lot of those nonpartisan people who did that, I don't think they're going to vote for him again. And I think some people who didn't bite the bullet and vote for Hillary after seeing Trump the last 4 years, I think a lot of them are going to get out and hold their nose and vote for Biden. So we'll see. Yeah. But I think it's going to be a slight margin that Biden will win. So do you want? I'll bet you $1 right now that it's All Biden, right. Just to make it interesting.
All right. Virtual social distance handshake on it.
That's it. I will mail you $1 if I'm wrong. So.
Okay. Because what I would say in response to that, I agree with basically everything you said, but I would point out that you said to anyone who is a close observer, and I would argue the majority of Trump's base is not a close observer of anything, and they still make up a majority of the voting population in the United States. Observers of what's actually happening in the economy make up like 2% of us, and most of them vote Libertarian. So,
yeah. No, that's 100% right. I just think it's the ones who were like not really Trump supporters, who were either Bernie supporters or independents, or just people who were like, hey, fuck it, why not? We'll see what happens. I think those people might be gone from his camp, especially after the last few weeks, because he's done some crazy stuff the last few weeks that some people who were like leaning toward him might be like, okay, yeah, no, never mind.
So. The other thing that leads me to believe that Trump might win is a kind of mixture of two things: the disillusionment with the young Democrats and the establishment, and how most of them turned out to be Bernie / like now Howie Hawkins or even Joe Jorgensen supporters, whereas Donald Trump had 14-year-olds in 2016 wearing MAGA hats to middle school who are now voting.
Yeah.
I think the last 4 years of the population that's been added to the voting base are going to be like at least 70% Trump of the people that actually show up on election day. Because most of the Democrats are like, fuck this is stupid. No. And the new Republicans are like, yeah, MAGA, whoa. Like, I know plenty of them personally, and they're all assholes, but it's fine. Like, I don't know. I think, like I said, I think it'll be close, but yeah, I think it'll be Trump. So you're on with that bet.
All right, man. Yeah, well, that pretty much covers everything I was thinking we'd talk about. If there's anything else you want to say before we close out about your campaign that's coming up or whatever, how that's going to play out.
Yes, if anybody lives in upstate or actually, if anybody lives in New York State, those are the only campaigns I'm working on. The 27th congressional district, like out in Erie County near Buffalo. Dwayne Whitmer needs help. And then Michael Madrid in the 10th congressional district, which is like Manhattan and Brooklyn, also needs a lot of help and donations. And Tom Quitter who's running for state senate in the 52nd district, which is like Binghamton area. I just joined his campaign as his volunteer coordinator. So we're getting volunteers and donations and really working to centralize on that campaign. It's a state senate campaign, so it's a smaller race, easier to win. Congress is a little bit bigger of a shot. So a lot of the upstate support is kind of congregating on Tom. So we would love as much help as we can get there. And then, yeah, stay updated, follow at Fight for Liberty on everything.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Dave. I'll definitely have you on again.
All right. You'll have to come on my show again.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll catch you next time.